guys, welcome to the Upshot. This is a podcast for dads trying to get it right. My name is Kyle. I'm joined by my good friend Shane, and we like to have conversations to help other fathers learn how to become better dads. I want to invite you guys to text the word Upshot to 97000. You'll join our text list to receive more updates and communication about how we are continuing to evolve the Upshot and give you more and more resources here in 2024. And now, here is today's episode. No, but today is an exciting day because we have a special guest, our friend Chris McSorely, joining us today on the podcast. And, you know, we invited Chris to join because of his experience as a father with two older girls now. And I've just heard stories about your parenting from other people, like the guy over here behind, you know, producing us, and from my wife and the stories that she's heard from interacting with your wife, Lori. And so having a chance to sit down with you this week and hear some of your stories firsthand was pretty cool. But that was part of the reason why we wanted to have you join us today, was for your unique perspective on raising girls, and I'm excited to jump into our conversation today. Any other introductory material that we need to offer to our audience on behalf of Chris?
You know, I hate it when people do this, but you know, when you look at children and you think that they've turned out all right and you automatically think, okay, what did their parents do? I want to learn from them. Yeah. And I hate that pressure as a parent myself. Like, I don't want people to look at my kids and say, oh, look, what did they do right or what did they do wrong? But when I look at Chris's daughters, I'm like, okay, that guy must have done something well as a dad. And he would be a great guest to have on this podcast because of the way he has fathered his daughters. And so I'm excited to hear what he has to say.
I don't have no idea how to respond to that. That's no, I appreciate that. You know, honestly, I love my girls. They from the time that I can remember, like Lori and I used to kind of half joke when they were younger. We want to be like them when we grow up. And you know, I think like looking at who they are today, that holds. They're amazing. I'm super fortunate. I've got amazing girls. So. I love them a lot. I don't know how much I can attribute that to me, but you know, I'm very thankful.
That's awesome. Very cool. Well, we usually get started on our podcast, Chris, by telling a fun dad moment, whether that's from the last month or, in your case, maybe it's looking back several years. Whatever you want to do. So, who wants to jump in with Shane? Why don't you lead us off with a dad moment?
Yeah, I've got two, if that's okay. I couldn't choose between one of these.
Okay, you have to one up everybody else with two.
Stop. Usually they're embarrassing. All right, dad moment. So I couldn't decide between one of these two. The first one is kind of a real quick one. My wife was sharing a little booklet that Lander had been working on. It's a booklet where he just kind of talks about things about him. And there were two things in there that really like made me tear up. The first thing he said is, I feel safe when dad is home. And that to me was really important because we're going to talk a little bit later about Chris's story, about his situation with his dad. And it was so important to me when we had children that my kids knew that they were going to be okay in my home. And so that when my wife was reading me this paper of all these statements that Lander said, that one just for some reason, it just caught me off guard because I wasn't expecting it, but it really just created hey, I might have done one or two things right. And then the other one is all of our kids play soccer. We have 6 kids, and one of the ways that we decided not to live in this chaotic world of 8 million different sporting activities was we pretty much told them you all get to play one sport, and it's the same sport. And so they all played soccer.
Did the oldest, was it Jonah? Is Jonah the oldest?
Yeah.
Did he pick soccer and now everybody else has to choose soccer?
Actually, Jonah's the one that never really... Jonah was the kid that was out there on the soccer pitch talking to the referee the whole game as the ball is going right by him. Like, he had no desire to play soccer. But so Matthew and Nathan are 2 oldest kids that are still at home. Yeah. They play on a high school soccer team. And they lost their game this past week. And Matthew is the captain on his team. And Matthew, I mean, he gives it his everything when he's out on the field. He's an encourager. And when they had lost, the team was very frustrated because they felt like they should have won the game. They had plenty of opportunities. Matthew missed a free kick, hit the corner crossbar, like just almost perfect shot, but just missed. And after the game, Matthew's had some real bad shin splints, so he can hardly walk. And Elaine and I could tell when he was out on the pitch that, hey, he's in a lot of pain. And so right when the game ends, he goes to his team. They sit down, they debrief a little bit. But then Matthew walks over to the other team, and he's literally congratulating every single one of their players. I mean, he has no idea who these kids are. And he's going up to every single one of them saying, hey, man, great game. You guys played incredibly. And I know he's inside frustrated about the loss, discouraged. And here's this guy that's going over to the other team just in humility, honoring them and letting them know that, hey, he sees them. And it was a great dad moment, just to watch your kid turn into something you're like, I don't know where he got it from, but praise God, he's turning out okay.
Yeah.
So just seeing his leadership come out a little bit was a great dad moment for me this past month.
I love it.
So those are mine.
That's a good one. Both of them are great.
Thanks.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's I feel like we should now interview you for the rest of the show.
I do not know how to raise daughters.
The story that I've come with here. So.
Oh, I've shared embarrassing ones. Don't you worry.
Yeah. So, like you mentioned, I have a few years to choose from. I think the first time I just felt like, oh yeah, great dad moment. So we were out camping with, a couple family friends of ours.
Yeah.
We're always all about the kickball game, right? So, bring the kickball and there's this open area. It's on pavement, but, open area out there, and we're playing kickball as you do. And I'm trying not to be like super, competitive or anything. You're just trying to, have fun out there. My youngest daughter is now running from third base to home, and I've got the ball. And so I'm intentionally not trying to just peg her with the ball, right? So I just kind of lob it in her direction, just to, gently,
But you're going to get her out.
But I'm going to get her out for sure.
Yeah.
But I'm
right.
Gently, right? And unfortunately, that lob caused the ball to just take an arc, and it caught her right in the legs. So she now just, her legs sweep out from under her, and her head literally bounces off the pavement. And she's tough. She bounces right up. She's like, I'm good. And then it was, a good 2 or 3 seconds later, and just all the tears. It's like I'm just trying to have fun and not break my daughter. But yeah, there you go.
Did Lori witness that?
Oh, everybody witnessed that. Yeah,
very important.
All families witnessed that. That was I didn't live that down for a long time.
That's awesome.
Chris, the same child that I was just honoring with his actions to the other team is the same child that I broke his arm with the soccer ball. So, in case you're wondering.
See, at least I didn't break any bones. That's good.
Yeah.
I almost broke her head, but
That's fun. We are entering into some new parenting, wading into some new waters for us. So I might share 2 stories today too, both about Maggie, our oldest, who's going to be 5 next week. And she, we have been preparing her for the last year for kindergarten because we've got the schools right around the corner from our house. We live, and so our neighborhood, we ride bikes by this, and we go play at the playground at the elementary school, all the time. And so we always tell Maggie, hey, this is your new school, this is your new school, this is your new school. Well, I think they're talking about school at her preschool right now, kindergarten. And in the last couple of weeks, at the most, the strangest times, she will, this will come up in conversation, and not provoked by Jess or me. It just comes up. So a couple nights ago, we're laying in bed and we're reading a book and about to put her down. And just out of the blue, we're reading a book about the Avengers or something, because she loves superheroes. And afterwards, we're just sitting there and she just says she just starts crying. Hey, I don't want to go to kindergarten. I don't want to do, it just comes out of nowhere. And it was this really interesting, and as a dad, I got so excited, not because she's sad, but because in this very strange moment, she chose to trust me with, hey, I'm scared of this new thing, and I'm going to miss my teacher. Now she's spiraling though, I'm never going to see her again. And it's Well, you actually may not ever see her. You may be right about that. But it was a really fun and affirming moment of like, wow, she trusts me right now with her, what I call, she's got big emotions, and well, they both do. But, and that was, for me, in that moment, didn't feel like I had to fix her. I didn't have to like make this all go away, but just hold her and love her and care for her and be sad with her. And that was, that's new territory. And so I'm hoping I can continue to appreciate those moments for what they actually are, which is her trusting me. Outside of that, the other one I was going to share about her today was we were, a couple of weeks ago, friends of ours gave us tickets to the rodeo, and we weren't really all that excited to go. It was on a Monday night. We were going to meet these people out there like 5:30. It's going to be late. It's like, okay, everyone's going to be late and tired, and we'll see how this thing goes. Well, we got armbands for the carnival, so it's like free rides. And growing up as a kid, I never had that. So like, we're like, let's go for it. And Maggie is like just tall enough where she's qualifying for like almost all of the rides. And she is just going ride to ride to ride to ride. And it was so fun to watch her with a couple of her friends. Like, they're just cruising, like just checking off all of these things. And she sees like the giant drop, like the kind of like the Tower of Terror kind of like drop thing. And she's like, Dad, I want to ride that. And I'm like, I don't want to ride that. Like, this is a carnival ride. Like, I don't trust these things. And she's like, I want to ride it. And I'm like, okay, well, can you want to ride it with your friend, like by yourself? And she's like, yeah, I'm fine. Like, let's go. And so she sits in there, 4.5-year-old sits in there and rides this thing, and like comes off. Jessica describes her like her face as like she has Halloween eyes, which means like she's overly tired, incredibly stimulated, but like so pumped up right now. Like that's how she gets on Halloween. And she was that way like at this carnival, and like loved every minute of this thing. And there's just a lot of fun to like see your kid just like transform into a maniac over like an adrenaline junkie here.
Transform into a maniac.
Yeah. And, we paid for that for a couple of days, like getting her back into routine and like caught up on sleep and everything else. But it was a lot of fun.
I want to go back to that first moment with Maggie when she talked about some of her emotions she was feeling about going back to kindergarten or going to kindergarten. Yeah. What did you say to her? Do you remember?
I just said, I think that it is sad. It is sad that you're going to miss your friends and your teachers, and you've had such a great experience. This is the only school you've known. And I said, and kindergarten it's not here yet, but when it's there, we're going to figure it out.
I just love how you're creating space for her to experience and see that her dad is a safe place. Yeah. Good job, Kyle.
Oh, thank you. That was a proud moment. Again, just looking at that, like I don't know what I've done other than like, it's built enough trust with her, but she chose to trust me. And that's come up like 3 or 4 times since at the strangest, we're wrestling, and then all of a sudden she starts.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing. Is like you don't know when these moments are going to come. You almost have to be ready 24/7 because you just don't know when your kids are going to open themselves up to you. Yep. And say, can I trust you with their words and their actions and their emotions? Yep. Good job, Dad.
Well, thank you. And that's kind of a good segue because I know Chris has some stuff to talk about related to that. And, we were catching coffee earlier. We caught some coffee. We had a cup of coffee earlier.
You caught some coffee?
It's like 6 a.m., guys. Speaking of coffee, got it. We had a chance to grab coffee and catch up. That's what I was trying to say. Nailed it. And
Fourth
nailed
time.
it, that one. And so I'm excited, Chris, to get into some discussion around your experiences raising 2 daughters. I'm particularly interested because we have 2 daughters, and we've had a lot of guests on the show who have boys. We've talked a lot about like initiating men and boys into men, but I'm excited to have a conversation that's a little more dedicated towards our daughters, and I think you have a unique perspective being on the other side of fatherhood too. So let's dig into that. First question really being, can you give us some insight into your goal or your upshot as a dad.
Hey, before you do that,
Yeah.
tell us about your daughters.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, sure. Remember, I'm not reading the question again. So you have to.
It's 6 a.m.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So
Tell us about your family.
Yeah. Who are these girls?
Who are they? Yeah. So I've got two girls, 23 and 21. My 23-year-old is married, coming up on 2 years here in May. And she's a deaf education teacher. So she has elementary age, 4th and 5th graders, deaf kids that she works with all day. My youngest daughter is graduating again. May. Everything's happening in May. So she's graduating in at North Texas, and she's studying media arts. So everything videography and photography and all that kind of world is what has her attention.
So both are almost graduated.
Aaron's totally done.
Gone. And Allie's
done and married.
Yeah.
and Allie's just about graduated.
Great. I remember when they were just like
tiny,
little girls.
Yeah.
Does Allie know what she's going to do when she graduates?
So she is applying to all the places right now. There's a lot of she's had a side business with her photography and done some videos too, and that's been going really well. Like just as she's going through school and just doing it on the side. But I think she's going to look for a job and get kind of more corporate experience and kind of rub shoulders with some other media folks and then see where she goes from there.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for introducing your family. Now, Kyle, you remember that first question you asked?
What's your upshot?
Oh, Kyle.
I would say there were I don't know if it was one. Maybe it's kind of like three main themes that we had with the girls as they were growing up. Number one, I think as far back as I can remember, the main thing that Lori and I just spent a lot of time praying about and thinking about was that when they grew up, that they would be known by how well they love, and by how well they love God and how well they love the people around them. That just be the thing when you think of Aaron and Allie. That's what you think of. So we gave them challenges through elementary school. I remember, every day they'd go to school and we'd kind of give them a challenge like, hey, think of somebody that you can love today. Like maybe you can buy, a kid in line like an ice cream cone, or, maybe you can help your teacher, clean up the classroom or something. Just, give them ideas like how can you tangibly show love to people? So that was, kind of one thing. The other is prepare them for life. You can't really prepare the world for them, but you can prepare them to, engage the world and just realize that there's going to be a lot of stuff that's thrown at them. They're going to have to navigate, and just give them the tools that they need to navigate life. And finally, I wanted to build a lasting relationship that, they move out of the house, but they still want to come home. They want our influence in their life. That they enjoy coming back. It's not just this obligation or, I got to go to my parents' house. I wanted to invest in kind of long-term relationships. So
is Erin still coming home?
She is. In fact, she's coming home this weekend. Yeah.
Great job, Chris.
Yeah.
I love it.
That's a I guess we may spend a lot of our time as dads wondering how well have we prepared our children to deal with the reality of the world after they leave. That's going to be this constant thing. But this is like that third one of feeling like you still have a relationship with them, and they're choosing to come home on the weekends or to come visit or to call or whatever. That's pretty exciting, and congratulations. That's
it's a really
happening.
This stage of life is really fun. I've got 2 adult amazing daughters that I just get to sit back and kind of just enjoy, right? Like we just get to enjoy time together. So it's really fun.
Now, this is an honest question. I want you to answer this honestly. Do they come home too much?
No, not at all. If anything, I wouldn't mind seeing them a little bit more, but no, it's great. It's actually perfect. They, we FaceTime a good amount, we get to see them. We either, we'll head up there and see them for a little bit, or they come home, and I think it's perfect. We did enter into that kind of phase of life with Erin being married now, where we get to share her with Ryan's parents. But they're amazing. Like I love it. It's fun. It's a little bit different to have, like, this year we get Thanksgiving, or this year we get Christmas, and that's just kind of an interesting phase of life. But sure. It's super fun. It's really good.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, you shared with me earlier this week, and it sounds like Shane's familiar with your story a little bit too, but you've shared that your dad has walked out on you when you were younger as a child. Would you tell us a little bit about that, and how did your experience with your own dad shape how you decided to show up for your kids, for your girls?
Yeah, they, so my parents divorced, I want to say it was about 3. And from there, there were many years of, he got remarried pretty quick after that. I think within a year or 2. I was young, so I don't have all the timeline exactly right, but I think it was pretty quick. And my general memory is that, she had her kids, and I think, they were starting their family, right? And so for a few years, I remember, kind of the repeated, like, hey, can I come visit? Or, try to call on the phone and, it's not a good time, or her, just, that sort of thing, where it became evident over time that, okay, well, this is just, this is my reality. I don't have a dad. And that's kind of like what I grew up with, just knowing. And I remember, like, going to friends' house and they have mom and dad there, and I distinctly remember kind of various points throughout the way thinking, like, I wonder what that's like. Like, that's interesting. Like, dad's here. I wonder what that's like. But it does, like, you don't realize that, I don't think, in the moment, but there's a lot of uncertainty that gets created. It's like there are things that you've got questions about being a man, and and I love my mom, and as much as she can do, there's just questions about being a man that's really hard to, like, for her to answer. So I felt those gaps. I think coming into, like, as I came into adulthood and was thinking about my own like family coming up. I think, I went into it with a lot of, like, well, here, I know what not to do. I don't really know what to do necessarily. So I read lots of books and had lots of conversations, but I know what not to do. And so I strongly identified with, like, being, like, really dependable. Like that was really important to me, and being consistent and being present, because I knew what the lack of that meant. So I kind of just went into it going, okay, well, I need to be there. And kind of how that played itself out a little bit with the girls when they were growing up. I would routinely ask them, like, I would just tell them, and I don't know if this is a good or bad idea. I think it worked out good. Like, I feel like it opened up communication. I just told them growing up, like, hey, I didn't have a dad. I've never seen this done. So I'm trying to figure this out as I go. So you have permission to come and tell me if I'm doing something that's frustrating, if I'm doing something unintentionally that, that I don't see. I want you to come talk to me about it. Come tell me. And maybe I'm doing it on purpose, and if so, we'll have a conversation about that. But maybe I'm not, and I want to hear that.
I love it. I have a similar story with my dad. And I think we as men have a lot of insecurities that we try to hide when it comes to fatherhood. Because, I mean, quite frankly, fatherhood, even if you had a perfect image of what a father looks like, can be very intimidating, the role. And so I'm curious did you ever have the voices in your head that would say things like, what makes you think you're any good at this? Like, you can't do this job. You don't know what this looks like. Even I understand that you read books, you talk to others, but for me, there was this constant battle that I had with my inner voices telling me, you don't know what you're doing. You ever experienced that? And what would you do in those situations to help you overcome the false identity or your false self that would say, Chris, you don't know what fatherhood looks like, so you can't do this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there were so many times, throughout the way you make so many decisions as a parent, and there's certain decisions where you're like, well, this is either going to be really helpful, and it's going to be a great parenting decision, or I'm going to ruin my kids. It's like, and I'm not 100% sure which way it's going to go. And so, like I felt that tension, several times along the way. I think one of the most helpful things was for me to just sit back and have a conversation with God about it and just be like, God, I know you love these girls more than I do, and I love them a lot. So, I need you to show up. But then also, just, like I said before, just keeping communication open with them. If you create space where they feel like they can come talk to you about anything, I think that's huge. Because if you are kind of going off the rails, if if you're creating tension, that they feel the freedom to come talk to you, and that's like just, you can work that out relationally.
That's good.
You ever hear those voices in your head, Kyle?
I would, yes, but it's not. I mean, it's rooted in a different place, right?
Yeah, your experience is different.
Yeah, my dad was around, and I think he was a great dad. But I'm in a season right now where, like, learning to be responsive to the emotion, like be emotionally present with my family.
Sure,
not just my kids, my wife too. I think that's new territory for a little bit. And so for sure, always doubting, like, is this what empathy is? I don't know. Like, is this how to comfort somebody? I don't know. I told Jess that yesterday. Like, this is such a strange concept for me, but we'll figure it out. We're learning.
All right, I'm going to ask you a question then.
Oh, gosh.
I know I'm going off course a little bit, but I think this is so important. I think this
Yeah.
is like a secret ingredient of fatherhood is empathy.
Yeah.
So if we have dads that are listening to this podcast, explain to a dad, what does it look like as a father to empathize well? And Chris, I'd love your feedback on this as well. With daughters, what does it look like to empathize with your daughters? That's it. Simple question, but I'm curious to know how you'd answer it.
Yeah. To me, it starts with the refusal to try to fix her, to change her state of being in that moment. My daughter's sad. The impulse is to, like, I want to make you happy.
Make her unsad.
Look, I'm going to tickle her. I'm going to wrestle. I'm going to change the environment. I'm going to, like, physically move her from here to somewhere else to where we're having fun. I'm going to go get a treat. Like, there's all of the, like, and we learn that when they're little bitty, right? Like, when they're little bitty and they're acting out, or they are throwing a tantrum or whatever, instead of, like, you don't practice empathy during a tantrum. Like, you just change the environment, like, distract them. Like, you just, so you learn these impulses for your own sanity, so you don't have to deal with a screaming toddler or baby anymore. Like, you meet a need. And so for me, empathy has become, they're expressing emotions, but they're behind the emotion, they have a need. And I've got to be present enough to figure out what is their need right now. And when they're little, the need is probably attention. I'm hungry. There's physical needs that need to be met, and it's okay to distract and to move them out of their environment and do whatever else. But when your kid's 5 and she's sad about kindergarten, she doesn't need me to wrestle with her right now. She doesn't need more. She just needs me to be with her, right? And she needs I think it is a security. It is I'm afraid, and she just needs to know she's not alone in that. And so I would say that's this. I'm sure it gets more challenging the older that they get, and the dealing with bigger things. I will still wrestle with that empathy component, but I think that's the best I can describe it today in the season that I'm in with a 5-year-old.
Yeah, I don't know if I can say it better than that. I'll say, like, that is probably, I don't know if this is universal for all dads, but I think that's the hardest thing to wrestle with is not wanting to fix it in the moment. Yeah. Because when you see your daughter sad, I mean, that's hard to just sit in that and not want to fix it. I think a lot of it too is spending time learning your daughter, like learning who she is. And
that's
kind
good,
of
Chris.
Just like knowing that, and so sometimes it goes all over the place, right? Especially as they get older, and there's sometimes a sense of like, what they're experiencing right now is they're ready to move on. They're ready to be adults, and they're ready for freedom. And what you need to be able to have in that moment is just like the awareness of like, I understand the stage of life they're at. I understand who they are. They're not trying to be disrespectful. It's like, just give them some space. I think as much as we need to, be training and all that kind of stuff, I think part of that is grace, and just giving them space and understanding who they are, understanding their personality, and understanding when they need a little space to process things, and maybe just sit in that and process it with them.
I like it.
So this is kind of flowing from that. We're going to skip a couple questions here, but one that pops up is like, what does a daughter need from her dad? What do daughters need from their dads? And maybe it's stuff we've just talked about, or maybe it's something completely different. But both of you also have daughters, so we'd love to hear from y'all. Give me your best advice. What does a daughter need from her dad?
Yeah, I feel like we could spend the rest of the time here.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot. I would think maybe in no particular order. I think you're kind of the first model of what a man is, and I think it's a big responsibility. But I think it's a really important one, right? That you're setting the pace for, this is how men treat women. This is how you interact with a man. I think, the way that you interact with your wife, the way that you interact with your daughter, like they're paying attention to all of that. I think it's super important, as they grow up, to not create attention gaps or affection gaps. I think they need that from their dad. They need their dads to be invested in their life. And I think my observation is, if there's gaps in those areas, they'll find ways to fill it, and usually with other guys that you're not going to want them to fill it with. So, I think that's such an important role to play of just kind of setting the pace for, this is what you should expect out of men. I think it was there was an interesting shift that I had at some point. I don't remember when this actually happened, but I remember, thinking when they were younger, and you kind of think ahead to when they're going to be dating, and I'm going to be that stereotypical dad that's like, I've got all the guns, and so your daughter's date's going to come over, and I'm going to scare him to death and make sure that he treats her right. And that shifted at some point for me, realizing what I need to do is I just need to present to her such a an appealing version of masculinity, of what it means to be a man, and how to treat a woman, that she'll just know. And if she starts dating the wrong guy, I don't have to scare him away. She'll know, and she'll fix it. And I'm of course always behind her, ready to go in case she needs any backup.
Yeah.
But I remember having that shift, and it's a little bit. It is an interesting kind of mindset shift, but I think it's an important one. I think finally the last thing I would say, I don't know, there's probably so many more, but I think like challenging them, taking them on adventures, getting them out of their comfort zone. I think dads are just good at that.
Yeah.
So your oldest daughter, Erin, is married.
Yeah.
And you talked about how you get to show them what it looks like to be a man, or to show them what a man should look like. When you look at her husband, do you see traits and characteristics that make you go, I did a good job of showing her what it looks like to be a man?
I feel super blessed. He is an amazing guy. He really is. And it's, throughout the whole like engagement and getting ready for the wedding, so many people are like, how do you feel about your daughter getting married? And is that strange? Are you, and like something that gave me great comfort is just knowing him and his character. And I just felt like I'd feel great about it. He's a great guy. He loves God. He loves Erin. I have no concerns.
I love it. Kyle, would you add anything else to what a daughter needs from her dad?
I don't have anything top of mind. No, I'm here learning.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah.
Well, how about you?
Well, I only have one daughter, so I feel like I'm surrounded by the professionals. So I don't know how much I should speak into this topic, but I did kind of, sorry, something in my throat. You're welcome, Jeremy. My daughter's adopted. I love her tremendously, but there are some things that I think have greatly influenced her identity as a person that has been adopted. And there are voices that she listens to that I think a lot of us just won't understand.
Yeah.
Like, why did my parents abandon me? No matter what we say or no matter what we do, those are the things that she will wrestle with probably a long time. But so I was thinking about, like, what does my daughter Kaylee need from me? And the things that I wrote down is she needs my presence. And that's more than just my physical presence, which I think we as dads sometimes check the presence box with our physicality, but nothing else. But they need our emotions. They need our thoughts. They need our. So I wrote my presence. They need my affection. So Kaylee greatly needs my affection because she never did get affection from her biological parents, and I'm sure she wrestles with that all the time. She needs my ears. This is kind of going back to empathy. Without fixing my ears, without words back, she needs my words. Affirmation, who she is, her identity. I love to tell Kaylee that she's beautiful, but not like she's beautiful because what's inside of her and what I get to see come out of her. She needs my prayers. And it's funny, I think almost my prayers aren't necessarily for her sake. Sometimes I feel like when I'm praying for my children, God is turning my heart towards them. And so I put my prayers. She needs my curiosity. I know sometimes we as fathers have a lot going on in our mind, and do we have the emotional and mental capacity to take in more information? And so I want to make sure, hey, am I being curious with my daughter? What was school like today? And I'm actually listening to what she's saying, and I'm asking her follow-up questions. And then I love what Chris said, because the last thing I said is she needs my example. Because she is, in her mind, as she's watching us, as our daughters are watching us as fathers and men, she's putting a narrative together of what she thinks a future boyfriend, a future husband should or should not look like. And so those are the things: my presence, my affection, my ears, my words, my prayers, my curiosity, my example are the things that I wrote down.
I think that's so good. I think the attention piece of not just being physically present, but be involved. I think that's just such a huge thing that I think dads sometimes, we can say, well, mom's volunteer on all the things, right? And it was just such a big deal for me to be like part of what they were doing, and not from a hovering, like I'm by no means like a helicopter parent, but I just got involved in everything they did. They got into swimming, so we did the 5 a.m. Saturday swim meets, and I was there, helping run the computers.
Craziness,
it's like in elementary school, got involved on the PTO board and got involved with Watchdogs, which is a program where dads take a day off and go hang out at the school, and they were into theater, and so be there for set builds, be there for their performances, be there for their games, know their music, know what shows they're watching on TV, be able to speak to it, and I think that's when you have that that kind of investment, there's just this sense of my dad actually cares about me personally, as a human, who I am and what I'm interested in, not just making me into something that he's interested in.
Yeah. That's good.
You shared with me during coffee the other day about the significance of Starbucks for you guys, and you're drinking Starbucks right now. But I think that's related here, and I would love for you to share for Shane and the guys listening, just about your memories with Starbucks and your daughters.
Yeah. So from the time they were very little, one of the things we would do to just spend time together is we'd go to Starbucks, and I'd bring the Barbie Uno deck, right? And as you do,
I got to get that one.
No.
I need 2 sets. I need the Barbie Uno, and I need an Avengers Uno for each kid. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'd bring some kind of game. Barbie Uno was pretty popular. And we just go there and she'd have, the girls would have some cocoa and I'd, have my coffee and we just spend time playing. And so that, that's when they were very little. And the moment that it kind of dawned on me that like, and this was just me, like, I'm just taking my daughters out to, have a good time with them and kind of spend time and
get out of the house.
Yeah, get out of the house a little bit. And kind of the significance hit me when we were driving down the road one day, and gosh, I don't remember how old she was, but elementary school. And we were driving by a little like kind of strip mall thing by her house that they were building something, and Erin looks over there and she goes, "I hope that's a Starbucks." And it hit me like, wow, that's like this is significant to her. Like this time together is really important. And so it's one of those, like, I'd like to say I had this like grand master plan going into it, but it was one of those like, oh, I realized that this is important. And so let's start doing this more intentionally. And again, I feel like I kind of stumbled into this one too, but by the time they got into middle school, we started up, we just kind of formalized it a bit. They learned that, if they wanted coffee, they had to pay for it. But if dad wanted coffee, dad buys. So there was, often the question, before we go to school, "Hey, Dad, do you want coffee?" So, and just over time, what that eventually morphed into was we formalized it between me and my wife. 2 girls, two of them, 2 of us. So we just traded girls every week, and so from like 6th grade on, this was kind of our pattern. We'd have 1 day a week. We'd get up. It shifted a little bit. I think it was mostly Tuesdays, but we get up and we go have breakfast together, and that's like 45 minutes to an hour of just dedicated time to get into the world. And my goal with that was 80-90% of the time just focused on them. Tell me about your world. What's hard? How are friends? What's interesting to you right now? What are you excited about? Just mostly focused on getting in their world. And every once in a while, if there was a thing that we were dealing with or a thing came up that week, maybe kind of lean into that a little bit, but I really didn't want the focus of that time to be, kind of dad time. I wanted that to be like, tell me about what's going on in your world. Yeah. And man, I would say that was probably one of the biggest things that played into, building relationship, was just that time. I can't say how valuable that was. Mm-hmm.
So as your girls aged and they got older, did they still enjoy that? Or was there ever a moment where they're like, I got to go to coffee with my dad today?
No, I mean, by all appearances, they loved it. Yes. They're either really good actors or...
You were still buying coffee. Okay.
I was still buying coffee. At the end of the day, it was free coffee, right?
Even as teenagers, your daughters wanted to spend time with you at Starbucks.
Yeah. And man, I would say it was even more valuable in that time because as they get into high school and they get their license and they've got friends and they've got freedom, so they can leave the house anytime they want. And they should, and they're going out and hanging out with friends and they're involved in the various activities at school and all that. So your time together at home, it diminishes quite a bit in high school. So that, like, I really held on to that as like, but I get this every week. And I like the most rewarding thing was, when the first year that Erin went off to school, she, it was like the first, week or two, she sent us a picture. It was Tuesday morning. She took a picture. She's at a coffee shop. I think it was like Einstein's. So Starbucks turned into Einstein's, ultimately at some point, as like kind of our main place. But, anyway, she took a picture. She's there at Einstein's with a cup of coffee and her Bible, and she's like, "You're not here, but I'm here this morning." And
that
like,
tug on your heart a little bit.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Like I don't know if I got anything done the rest of the day. Yeah,
that's good. So I know you have a list of questions, Kyle.
I don't care about.
And I get off track all the time.
Let's go.
But I think this is really important because I think there are dads that are probably listening to this podcast, watching this podcast, and they're thinking, gosh darn it, I need to be taking my daughter out for breakfast or coffee or whatnot. And maybe they haven't done a lot of that leading up to this moment. And I can see dads being really overwhelmed because they don't know how to start this, because it's like, I'm terrified to sit at a coffee shop with my daughter for an hour because it's awkward. She may not want to go. How do I even get started? And I know you might simply say, just go take them out. But I know there are dads that have a lot of fear and anxiety, and they want this, but they don't even know how to start. So what do you say to the dad who's leaning in saying, Chris, I would love to do what you did with your daughters and take them out for coffee, but it's really hard. Whether it's because I don't have time or they don't have time or they don't want to or it's expensive or, I mean, you come up with a million excuses. So what do you say to that dad?
Yeah, I would say, of all the excuses, if I don't have the time or money, I think that those are the easier ones to solve. Probably, I think we allocate time and money for things that are important, and like I would say I can't think of many things that are more important than investing in that relationship. I'd be happy to give up whatever I needed to give up to create that space and the budget for that. But I think, and maybe, for all girls, it's not coffee, right? But I think it's important to pay attention to what do they like. And it's a lot harder to, drag your daughter to something that you like. I like coffee, so I'm just going to drag him to coffee with me, right? I don't think that's a win. Find out what are they into, and pursue that. So, whatever that may be, create space around that. And so it doesn't have to be breakfast in the morning. That's what totally worked for us. But find a thing that is interesting to them, and because the goal of this is to get into their world and just understand them and create relationship there. The goal isn't for you to try to get them to like the things that you like and
Sure.
do things on your terms, right? So just start there, and honestly, from a conversation standpoint, at least my experience is you can just ask a couple questions and they're happy to talk. So it's sometimes I had a harder time. I showed up and I asked maybe one or two questions and they're just and off and going. And maybe that's not going to be everybody's experience, right? And I think what I would say to that, if you're having a hard time getting into that conversation, if the answers are short and you're well, how was your day? Good. If you're having that kind of thing, don't just try to think through questions that don't have one word answers. So don't ask yes or no questions. And I mean, you can obviously, start with some of that, but ask questions that require a bit more, explanation. So ask them to explain the thing, if whatever they're into, hey, explain that to me. So what's interesting about that? Can you tell me how that works? And, just think through questions that will cause them, all people, I think, just naturally like to talk about things that are interesting to them. So find questions about things that they are interested in. And I feel that I don't know if that will work for everybody, but I think that's probably where I would start.
I think it's important to note. Freaking microphone. All right. I think it's important to note, though, Chris, so I can see for the guys who may be intimidated by that. They want it, but they're intimidated. A couple of things from yours, just if we use you as a case, as an example. One is you started when they were young, unintentionally. You happened into this when they were little. And so if guys are further down the road and they're I don't have this, I think just to remember that though the investment that you made into your daughter's lives when they were little was a significant, and it compounded over time. And so for the guys listening, if you haven't started this but you want to, then I think you've just got to create some just lower some expectations around it's going to take time to build this muscle and trust and value, even for my daughters to appreciate maybe what this can be. And you're not doing it today so that next week they're opening up about everything going on in the world, but that 5 years from now, there's still, if we can be consistent with this. So I love the consistency that you did, and it was just deposits of your time over and over and over and over many, many years. And so I think that is for the guys who are wrestling with it, it's like, you're not just there's no quick fix to this, but it is going to be a compounding thing, just like everything else, right? Anything worth doing, it's going to take a lot of time and it'll compound.
Well, I do love the other thing you said I thought was really important, especially if a dad doesn't know where to start. You made it sound so natural because you did start early on. You knew what your daughters loved. And you asked questions around things that they were passionate about. And people do like to talk about the things that they love. Mm-hmm. As fathers of older daughters, I think start there. Just take a second and reflect on what are the things that my daughter really likes. And you may need to invite their mom into this conversation to get her to kind of like, hey, your daughter really loves these 5 things. And then just start there and ask your daughter questions around those things and just see if you can start creating conversation through the things that she loves. I think that's fantastic, Chris.
No, 100%. And I like lean on your wife a lot. And, moms, I think, can be just, a bit more inherently relational. Yeah. And there were lots of times where I had to go back to Lori. I was like, all right, help untangle this like web of friendship for me. Like she threw out a lot of names and I'm trying to piece it all together here.
Yep.
It's good.
But
it's good.
Yeah.
Well, and then the last thing I wanted to mention, and you said it to me the other day at coffee, but was similarly, you got to the quality time and the quality relationships and the trust through a significant quantity of intentional time of showing up. And so a lot of times we don't get to choose when our children, especially when they're older, I'm sure, I'm maybe projecting that, but learning from you guys that we don't get to choose when they decide to open up to us.
Yep.
Yeah.
But if you show up consistently enough. So for me, I can see that I'm going to have to challenge myself not to allow like feelings of rejection that when my children don't want to talk to me, not to prevent me from continuing to show up and be present and to try and to investigate and be curious and remain committed to showing up, over long stretches of time.
Yeah. I don't know how to manufacture quality time. And all I've seen just kind of like throughout my life with the girls is spend enough quantity time with them. And in the most unexpected times, those quality moments come up and you have that conversation or you have that kind of, you share a laugh or you share an experience together that like suddenly sticks out. And you're like, that's a moment that, that we just keep going back to and referencing. And I think also just be prepared to, have these moments that are not on your timetable. For whatever reason, both when they were like young and even as they got older, sometimes like late at night, right before they're going to go to bed, is the time that they just decide like, I want to open up about my whole day. And I think when they're younger, it's more like, I'm not ready to go to sleep. And so they're just trying to like stall.
Yep.
But I would say lean in, like give them that space to like, you're tucking them in, let them talk about their day. Don't cut them off. If you're at that stage of life where you're still tucking them in, if you got older kids and they just have, they're up, they get home, it's, 11:30, midnight, you're tired, you're ready to go to bed, and they just start sharing, do what you got to do to stay awake and engage. And so like be available on their timetable and be available like for their interests.
Some good stuff in there, Chris.
It's great.
Yeah.
I think we're getting close on our time.
Yep.
Any other burning questions that you have, Shane, that or topics that you want to chat through?
It's a great question, Kyle. No, I think we've covered everything.
So, Chris, as we wrap this, a couple of things. We'll wrap with like what's our takeaway today, but any other advice or words of encouragement or wisdom that you might, from your experience raising 2 girls, that you'd want to leave with our guys listening? No pressure.
Yeah, none whatsoever.
This is it.
This is what they're going to remember. Right. This last thing that you say, Chris. Don't screw it up.
Yeah, man, I don't know if I felt like the one thing. I think I kind of touched on it for a second ago. Of, I think your wife is super valuable in this process. We may not always agree on like approach or certain things, but there's so much wisdom there, and she is a woman, like, so there's a dynamic there that she gets, and the number of times where kind of I was doing my dad thing and maybe just kind of was trying to make my point overly so. Lori would, wait for the girls to leave the room, and she'd just kind of look at me and say, "Do you want to be right, or do you want to have a relationship?" And like I needed that reminder frequently, and so there were many times where I just had to go back up to their room and sit on the edge of the bed and apologize, or kind of say, "Hey, you know what? Here's what I was trying to say, and I probably didn't present that in the best way possible." So, be willing to apologize a lot. And I think that's good. Like, I think your kids need to see that as well. Like,
totally.
You don't, and for my personality, it's hard. I like to be right. I really do.
We all do, Chris. It's not Chris.
I'm always right.
I feel like I have an especially hard time with that. But I think it's super important for them to.
I love what you said. Do I want to be right, or do I want to have a relationship?
Yeah.
Kyle, what's your takeaway?
That's great. I think it is, my takeaway from my time with you, Chris, is like, I want to get creative about how I'm going to be curious about my girls consistently. And so it's probably not going to be coffee, but what is it? Right now, currently it's roses, but I need to shift that away from there and enjoy something differently. So, that's exciting to me, is to think about what that can produce. The seeds that we can plant now, what can that produce, 10 years from now? That's exciting.
It's good.
Yep.
Yeah, Chris, there's so much things you said that I'm wrestling with, and you've challenged me as a father of a daughter. And, I always ask my daughter questions like, how was school? How was your day? And I think I'm going to pay attention to, hey, what are the things that Kaylee really loves, and try to specifically ask questions around those topics. And then I love what you said, how you can't you don't know how to manufacture quality time, but the quantity of time that you spend with them will lead to quality time. I thought that was fantastic. So those are my two.
Yep.
Chris, you take anything away?
Yeah, I think, this is a good reminder for me of, the girls are out of the house. They're not there. Like, I can't take them to breakfast every week anymore. Right. But I still need to be pursuing that relationship, and I think it's potentially easy for me to kind of get caught up in the day to day and work pressure and things that are going on that are like right in front of my face. But I still need to be pursuing a relationship, and initiating FaceTime with them, not just waiting for them to call me. Like that's it's an ongoing thing. This, like, my job's not done.
It's good, man.
Yeah, our job is never done. It's good, Chris.
Great, guys. Hey, thank you so much. And I think this was a fun podcast.
I hope so.
It was awesome.
I enjoyed it.
And guys, if you're listening, I hope this was valuable for you guys. And we'll see you again sometime soon.
Bye. Hey, dads, thanks for tuning in to today's episode. Kyle and I are honored to have you, and we hope you took something away from the episode. Wherever you are, we appreciate your support. So go ahead, hit that like button, the subscribe button, or whatever button is in front of you with the technology you're using. And if you wouldn't mind to let us know that you're actually tuning into this podcast, we would love it if you would text the word Upshot to 97000. That won't just let us know that you're listening, but it's also a way that you can subscribe to any updates or resources that we will have coming down the pipeline in the future. Again, guys, thanks for tuning in. We hope you have a wonderful week, and we can't wait to see you next time.